Thank you, Andrew. I'd like to firstly acknowledge the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet and pay my respects to elders past and present. Can I thank the National Press Club for the invitation to debate today, acknowledge the parliamentary colleagues that are here, in particular Tim Watts, and can I also thank the Press Gallery. It's an important debate to be had, and of course you might understand I do disagree with what some of the things Peter has said. I acknowledge him too as my counterpart today. 80 years ago yesterday, the Royal Australian Navy and Air Force joined US forces to fight back on an aggressor that sought to take hold in Port Moresby and the Solomon Islands. The Battle of the Coral Sea was a tactical draw but a strategic victory. And in fact, what followed were two decisive wins in the battles of Midway and Guadalcanal. 7 months before that, a newly elected Prime Minister, John Curtin, turned our eyes to the United States, and that strategic pivot provided an opportunity to defend this nation effectively. 80 years on, that important security alliance is still in place, and it's been deepened and broadened, and in large part that's because of the bipartisanship it enjoys. So people shouldn't be surprised that Labor supported the AUKUS proposition when it was put to us. You shouldn't be surprised that we also supported President Biden enlivening the Quad, or for that matter, agreeing very swiftly on the government's decision to provide lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine. And can I just again acknowledge the ambassador to the Ukraine that's here today, a remarkable representation, and very important that he's here. Can I also say that we also believe that we need to, as an opposition, support the government of the day on national security issues, and that's even when the government plays partisan politics on national security. But we also have another job, and that's to hold the government to account. And the fact is, this government has failed to deliver the defence capabilities that this country needs. In almost a decade, they have not delivered the assets that they've promised. I think it's also fair to say that, and in fact Greg Sheridan recently wrote, that if you could guarantee Australia's security by announcements that have been made, we'd be the most secure nation in the world. Furthermore, I think it's also fair to say that the Morrison government's made some serious national security mistakes, some significant foreign policy missteps. They've had 6 defence ministers in 9 years. They've had 4 defence ministers in 4 years under Scott Morrison, which has resulted in inadequate oversight and focus on this portfolio. They've not only failed to deliver a submarine in almost a decade, they've spent $5,500 million not doing so. They have had helicopters that can't provide cover fire for our troops and have cancelled that contract. It's wasting billions of dollars. A frigate contract that is delayed, riddled with serious engineering issues, billions of dollars over budget. Existing vessels with too little firepower, not updating the naval shipbuilding plan as promised. Our only armed drone program, Sky Guardian, cancelled inexplicably, nothing to replace it. They've announced the life of type extension to the Collins-class submarines 6 years later than advised. On the national security front, Scott Morrison allowed for the Darwin port to be leased to a state-owned Chinese enterprise for 99 years. Just remember that. Labor. It was Labor winning government stationed the US Marines in Darwin, and it was Scott Morrison that flogged off the port to the Chinese. The fact is there are more mistakes too. We've seen it with the allowing a Chinese-owned company to store sensitive government data from the Australian Tax Office, Treasury, and if you can believe it, the Department of Defence. On the foreign policy front, they've badly damaged our relationship with the French, with the currently now newly re-elected French president. The European state, which has the greatest presence in the Indo-Pacific. Compounding that mistake, they forced President Biden to apologise to the French for that fallout. They've abandoned the strategic ambiguity approach adopted by the US when it comes to the conflict potential conflict that might involve Taiwan. They've turned on its head the Teddy Roosevelt maxim, talk softly and carry a big stick. In fact, they shout from the rooftops. but they don't deliver the stick needed, and it won't be here until it appears 2040. And finally, they dropped the ball in the Pacific, not being seen to treat Pacific Island countries fairly or seriously, cutting foreign aid, mocking their concerns about climate change by failing to comprehend the importance of soft power diplomacy. They have failed the art of statecraft. And that's why we do need a government that thinks strategically and long term. We need a government that won't offend our friends. We need a government that enhances local content. We need a government that engages more in our region. Frankly, friends, we can do better. We need to elect an Albanese Labor government. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr O'Connor.